Spoken label. I haven't thought about flying for a long time. I haven't dreamed of that moment when I was alone above the clouds for a long time. I haven't dreamed of waking up in a room surrounded in blue and green grass for more years than I could dream of remembering. I haven't walked back into the past or scratched on the doors of my origins, where it all came from, since I held up that cape for the last time.
Return to Kent Town 10th Year Anniversary Edition is a revised version of Andy N's first poetry book. The book can be purchased from Amazon and it contains numerous additional material.
Spoken Label. Hi, it's Andy N from Spoken Label. Thank you today for streaming or downloading another episode of Spoken Label. Spoken Label was originally set up on beginning of 2016 and as of speaking has currently nearly 300 sessions. The full archive is available on Spoken Label bandcamp.com. Although it is available for free for stream and download if you wish, I am always grateful for any sort of kind of donation to enable me to keep the running costs of this podcast going. And enjoy. Take care. Bye bye. Spoken Label.
Hi guys, Andy N, Spoken Label, back in the house on a Tuesday evening as well. It's been raining all day in Manchester as well, so we're used to that by now. Lady I'm speaking to today is back across the seas again, and she's got a pretty fascinating story today to tell us about her book, and I'm going to want to keep it a surprise for you for once. Now, Rebecca, for people that don't know you, would you first of all like to introduce yourself? Tell them obviously where you come from and what started with your writing, and we'll take it from there.
Okay, I'm Rebecca DeHarling. I live in Oakland, California, though I'm originally from St. Louis, but we've lived here since 1978. So in California, that's considered being a native because there's so many transplants here. I studied Spanish language and literature in grad school, and one day, I don't know, in like the early 90s, I got an idea for a book from the 17th century Spanish plays that were called honor plays, in which a man's honor is of the utmost importance and depends a lot on the women in his life, his wife, his daughter, his sister. And if one of them does something or something happens to her, such as she is violated, then that stains his honor. And a way to clean his honor could be to kill her. So there are a lot of plays like that in the 17th century Spain. And of course, it's never shown from the woman's point of view. So I wondered what it would be like to explore what options might there be for a woman who was in that situation in a very, very restricted society of 17th century Spain.
Yeah, it's a really, really fascinating book what you've done here, because I don't want to go into too much, jump straight into it, but obviously I want people first of all to understand the journey you had with this book, because I know from what you've been telling me pre-chat and also your emails, this book took over 20 years to write, hasn't it? So tell me a bit more about the history, because I think the history of it is very, very interesting in this book.
Okay. In the early 90s, I said to my husband, I'm very melodramatic, right? Like, I don't want to die without having at least tried to write a novel. So he's been so supportive all through this. I quit my day job, which was in hospital administration, and worked on the novel off and on for about 6 years, and a lot of self-doubt. I didn't know if it was good enough to ever go anywhere. And in those days, there weren't as many options for getting one's book out as there are nowadays. So I decided that I couldn't any longer justify just staying home and writing. So I actually went back to school again. I love school, by the way, and got the certificates needed to teach English as a second language to adults. And I did that for 13 years. And then I retired and looked at the, so now it's like 2015, looked at the books, what I had written before, and thought, I thought I had plenty perspective on it at this point, and thought, well, this isn't terrible. I think it's worth looking at again. And at that point, I would say I had, because, as you know, many revisions in writing, but I had probably maybe 70% of what would finally wind up in the final book. And of course, at that point, I knew there were other options for publishing too. So I picked it up again, and for a year, I queried agents, and I got, people wanting to see the manuscript, but nobody willing to represent me. And, I get it. This is their livelihood. If they're not sure they can sell it, then they're not going to take me as a client. So I did hybrid publishing, in which you have a real publisher, they pre-sell into the market, they have the designers, everything that you need, but you do pay the cost. So that's what I did, and I'm very happy with that decision. So yeah, it was definitely a labor of love.
Oh yeah, and it's interesting that I didn't know you gone for the hybrid option with it. I know some people have gone through that before and had very mixed results. I know some people have done really well with it, and I know some people have absolutely really struggled on it. So, in relation to the marketing side of it, then was it a bit more trickier to market this book? Because obviously, it's not a straightforward novel anyway to read in the first place. Very straightforward.
Yes, I think I finally decided, excuse me, I finally decided that I was going to call it a historical fiction. I mean, it's a dual timeline, as you know, but about 70%, and yes, I actually counted the pages, about 70% of it is historical. And even the modern time is in the 1990s. So yes, it's hard in that sense, and oftentimes in the description, I say that it's a dual timeline. And the structure is definitely not your typical structure. So those were all things that, perhaps made it a little bit more difficult to market, but, you got to plug along.
Yeah. I'm always a believer, to be honest with you. It's like any sort of book. And like you're doing a book, what you've done here is you've sometimes, and I've read a review on Amazon talk about this before your book, actually, and I disagreed with this, actually. So, I like a book that's jumping all over the place to make you think, sure, you got to try and play catch up with it. So, obviously, like I said, if people are wondering, obviously, your book itself, it's jumping, we said before, it's jumping into timelines 1660 and 1992. And I thought to myself, anybody has the guts to do that as a writer, you've got my respect straight away. But did you find it took a lot of plotting to get the book to operate the two different timelines? Obviously, two different worlds, really, wasn't it?
Yes, writing it was one thing, and writing different sections, but deciding how they could all fit together, and where my book is also atypical, even for a dual timeline, because the modern part doesn't start until about a third of the way into the book. So I did a lot of, it's almost like a jigsaw puzzle of where are these pieces going to go. And actually, when I got to the point of, okay, I think this is the best I can do, or I want to have somebody else, a professional person look at it, and I sent it to a developmental editor. And I was very afraid that she was going to say, you have one half of two different books here.
Yeah.
But luckily she didn't. She liked the structure and thought it worked. So that was a huge relief.
Oh, but it was indeed. Now, what you did that was even more interesting when I was going through the book before, was it? Again, it's not just a case you've actually done it at 2 points of view. You started bringing other points of view into the book as you went along as well. Now,
yes.
Was that the plan originally to have so many points of view in the book, or were you originally just going to be 2 points of view?
I always knew that I was, I'm assuming by different points of view, you're talking about the diaries and letters. Diaries,
yeah. And you've got obviously like Anna's wrote some, I call them point. I'm just doing Game of Thrones talk here. Like it's so many points of view, like you got Anna, Emilio, and then obviously like you go into, and you got Juliana comes into it, and there's Rachel. I said, and Solomon towards the end of it as well. Lizzie, Jenny, there's so many points of view, and it's brilliant.
Well, Yes, I would say, did I know this from the beginning? Absolutely not. I am definitely a seat of the pants, a pantser writer. Did not have a grand plan from the beginning, but it's sort of, I didn't know right away that basically I was, I thought that I would have the young woman, obviously Juliana, and then her aunt. And then I thought it would be good to have a modern person reacting, especially since I decided to go the route of having pretty much most of what we know about Juliana be in the form of her diary. So I wanted to have somebody, a modern character, Rachel, reading it and reacting to it along with the readers, to sort of like anchor the reader a little bit instead of just floating around. And then the letters at the end just seemed like a good way to connect and give that idea of sort of a line of women in the past that we're connected to.
Yeah, I think it makes sense. Like, I think what you've done is, I like the term of jigsaw puzzle, because I'm always a believer when writing myself. I don't like laying everything else on the plate for a reader straight away. I like to make them work for it. And your book certainly makes people work for it. That's for sure it is. You got my respect for that one straight away. Now, I want to ask you as well, obviously, on your bio, there's a bit of it about you and your sister discovering some family papers almost 20 years after you started the novel. Now, this I found really, really interesting. Tell us a bit more about this then.
Yes, after my dad passed away, my mom was already in an assisted living situation, and we went through their papers and found something about my mom, which I don't feel like I can reveal because she never told us about it. And at that point, she was beginning on the road to dementia, so I felt she was very vulnerable, and we never asked her directly about it. So, but it really made me think about family secrets. I mean, because here was something that my mother kept from me for her entire life. And what is the effect of that? And that's one of the, things I look at in the novel. I mean, it's not just the secret that Rachel discovers, but also at the very beginning, Anna, reading her deceased husband's diary, also learns things about him that she didn't know. And what's the effect of that? And I, would like readers to think about, even if you keep a secret from the best of intentions, is that always the best decision? And I don't know what the answer to that is. And it's going to vary by case, but I think it's something worth thinking about.
Yeah, yes. I was like before, like, there's a book that makes you think. This one is, I think it's a book that I didn't know where it was going till you got to the end of it. Like, because I thought myself, like, you're doing like a book with over 300 years gap between the two central characters. You're trying to think, where's it leading this book? And I like the fact you didn't go down the obvious route with it as well. So, no, that was excellent. Really, really good stuff. Now, obviously as well, I know you've been involved with some same monthly book group, haven't you? So tell us a bit about that then, because obviously this looks like, I get the feeling that this has actually proved to help you with your book, didn't it?
Oh yes, it absolutely did. Yes, I joined the book group in 1984.
Wow.
And I mean, my kids were little. I stayed home the first few years, and I really needed some intellectual stimulation after going from graduate school, first in Spanish language and literature, and then I started an MBA graduate program, and I needed something. So I joined, and because it's through, we have here a national group, the American Association of University Women, which has been in existence since 1860s. And so the book is through my local branch. And so that gives it continuity. And really a lot of the people who are still in it are people who were in it when I joined. So it's been, I love my book group, obviously, staying with it all these years.
Yeah, it's incredible.
It's worked to help me in a couple ways, because we do pretty serious review. We always have a designated reviewer for each book, and they look at the bio, they look at the criticism, we discuss whether we agree or not with the critics. And So in that way, it helps me think about, think in a deep way about reading a book. And we read nonfiction also. But I maybe even more valuable was that I learned the lesson that not everyone likes the same books. So I went into this knowing that there are going to be people who do not like my book, and that's okay. I remember that one of the books that I had suggested and reviewed in my book group was a Pulitzer Prize winner, and most of the people in my group hated it. I won't say what it was.
I like it.
So that, not that my book is on that level, but it's like, okay, not everybody likes it, and that's okay. That happens to all authors. So that's helped me a lot.
I think you just learn as an author, because I've done it myself on the books I wrote and bits and pieces. You just learn to have thick skin, don't you? So
yes, you have to.
Yeah. I think it's like if you take disappointments all that and hand in hand, I'd debate whether we'd actually finish the book, let alone bring it out. That was straight away. So yeah. When you were was there any books that proved a big influence on you when you were writing this book over time?
Oh. Well, there's certain authors that I love, Toni Morrison, Geraldine Brooks. And I was thinking the other day, I think the first book that I really remember thinking, wow, the language in this is beautiful, was actually All the Pretty Horses by Cormac McCarthy, which, is kind of a Western, right? Yes.
Oh, I have read that. That was a few years ago, wasn't it?
Yes, it was a long time ago.
For me as well, yeah. God, yeah.
Yeah. But I remember thinking, like stopping after certain passages and just looking at how he had written that and how beautiful the language was. And I thought that and that was way before I ever thought to start writing myself, but I thought I want to pay a lot of attention to the language if I possibly can. So
it's a great choice. Great choice indeed. Yeah. So I've read a number of his books over the years straight away with that. So excellent. Mm-hmm. Now I'm pretty well covered up with the questions now, but I've got a couple of funny, silly stuff we can conclude with now, because I love the cinematic quality of the book. If you ever got this is crazy. I'm just off the cuff now. If you got off the 10th minute of the film, who would you cast as the two main females in it?
Oh my gosh!
I know it's the book's so cinematic. That's why.
Yes, I don't know. I guess for Anna and Rachel, I mean, I can only think of the really famous people. I would love, Emma Thompson or
aim high,
aim high, right? Why not? We're in dreamland here for
exactly,
sure. So.
Exactly.
I don't know. For the younger person, I would say for Juliana, I mean, though she's a little bit old for how Juliana is to begin. Emily Blunt, I'm very impressed with her range. She can do almost anything.
Brilliant, yeah. We just watched her in the two Quiet Place films almost back to back last week. And absolutely, it's incredible performances in the first one, particularly, yeah. Yes, I've seen a few films. Very, very versatile actress, yeah. No, it's just like I love the cinematic quality of the book. That's why, and it's that sort of thing. Who knows with luck? You never know, do you? So, definitely that. So, no, it's excellent. So, do you ever envisage yourself writing a second book, or you're not sure yet?
Yes, I'm working on a second book. It's I don't know why I decided this, but before I wrote it, I thought. I had read the book, The Weight of Ink by Rachel Kaddish, and it's a dual timeline, set also in the 17th century, but in England. And it's about a woman who is very interested in philosophy, and using a pseudonym, a man's name, actually winds up writing to various famous philosophers of the time. So I thought, I want to present a woman in the time period who is doing something unusual, because there's this idea that we can sort of fill in the gaps in history for the people who aren't represented, women and minorities, people of color. And if you can in fact, Rachel Kaddish, the woman who wrote The Weight of Ink, wrote an article in the Paris Review in about 2018, I think, saying that if you get all of the details correct, as much as you possibly can, it will make, and you insert a character that fits in, that is credible, then it may be that, yes, that person could have existed. maybe that person had to have existed. And I really liked that idea. And I think Hilary Mantel wrote something about that time goes through a sieve, and some people in history get kept and some go through the sieve and get lost. And Rachel Kaddish says something like, yes, but we can catch them in our hands. And I really liked that idea of presenting a woman who we wouldn't necessarily think would be doing something at a particular time. So I decided that I wanted her to be involved in cartography. So I thought, oh, this is perfect, because I wanted to keep the same time period. And I thought, well, surely Spain at that time in the 17th century was big on map making because of the, exploration, the New World, all of that. Well, it turns out that was wrong. The focus for cartography and map printing at that time was Amsterdam because of the Dutch East Indies and Dutch West Indies companies. So in almost exactly the same time period, the 1660s in Amsterdam, the largest book of the century was written. Well, it's actually multiple volumes called the Atlas Major, and it's an atlas of many countries in the world, was printed in Amsterdam. So that's what I'm working on. I have a woman who's going to be involved in that. It's a lot of research because Spain and the Dutch Republic were very different places, obviously.
Yeah.
In so many ways.
That's what I was wondering about, because obviously, like I said, you can tell from the first book, obviously. Have you found then the way his research has changed between the two books? Obviously, with the first book taking a long time to probably schedule together.
Yes. Well, of course, when I first started writing the first book, we didn't have an internet. So that was a very strange thing when I picked it up again. And it was almost like, well, do I need to recheck everything now that we have the internet? I didn't. But there's so much more available now, of course. And so I would say that has helped. That has really changed in the way I did the first book. Also, this one is not going to be dual timeline, as far as I know so far. But
watch this space is all I'm going to say.
Yeah, and it's also not going to be based on diaries and letters like so much of the first book was. So I have to do a lot more granular kind of research. In the first one, I didn't talk a lot about clothes or food or transportation or things like that. I mean, there is some of all of that in there, but not to the level of detail that I will need now. Because if you're writing in your diary, Juliana is writing about things that are important in her life, not so much this is what I had for supper. But in one where it's in the current time, I think I need more details like that. So in that sense, my research is changed, but I still want to try to take in the big picture also, as I tried to do in the first one, of the view of the government at the time, what were the basic economic conditions in the country, and sort of work that in, but also have to do a lot more detail.
Oh yeah, I think it's that. I'm always a believer. So I've done like half a dozen books myself over the years. I'm just trying to my internet's stalling, I guess, to start this, so just knocking a few things off. Right, anyway, hopefully I'll sort it now. Anyway, I'm always a believer. Every book you write, and I've done half a dozen poetry books over the years, and I've got two novels on the way, one way or another. But I'm always believe each book is a reaction to the previous book, and have you found that yourself? And I think each book's you move from point A to B, aren't you? And everything changes.
Yeah. Yes. I see what you're talking about, and I do feel that in some ways. It's not only in the subject matter. So, for example, in the subject matter, religion, of course, was very important in the first book, because you can't talk about 17th century Spain without talking about religion and the Inquisition, though I tried not to make it the main part of the book, as it is in a lot of books about 17th century Spain. But the role that religion plays in the Dutch Republic is so completely different. There's so much more tolerance, but there's still sort of an official religion, but you could you didn't have to belong to the official religion, but you needed to keep it sort of on the down low if you didn't. So that's one thing that's I'm definitely going to have to explore because it's an important part of the culture. Also, as far as structure goes, I think having done the dual timeline, and as you mentioned, as we talked about at the beginning, it's a little bit more difficult to market if it's not one straightforward thing. So that's also part of what I'm thinking about in doing this second novel. And also, the first time I was intimidated by the idea of doing one story arc that would last the whole novel, which in part explains why I did it the way I did it, having a dual timeline. So having one book behind me, I'm telling myself I have the confidence to write one story arc that will go across the whole novel. So we'll see how that works out.
Good luck with it, definitely. So, do you have any sort of ideas when this book's coming out yet, or is it still a work in progress?
My publisher, I think we're going to do 2023, but I'm really under the gun then, so we'll see.
Yeah, that's fair enough. Because like I said, if you get done for 2023, it's you've up to your certainly productivity from the first book anyway. So
yes,
that's for sure of it. So have you done many readings on this first book? Have you pre-lockdown?
No, because it was published already.
No,
it was just published.
Really, it came out in September.
Pandemic.
Sorry, my fault.
I found that it in some ways it was fine. For example, my launch I did on Zoom, and so I had a local bookstore who was involved. So they sort of, they introduced me. And then I had a fellow author who interviewed me, and then I was able to have like different people do readings from the book, because there's so many more people can come on Zoom. So on Zoom, I think I had about 60 people, because people from all over can come, right? But if you do it in a bookstore, you're lucky to get 20, right? So in that way, that worked out fine. And there's just a lot of online things to do, that I've been trying to take advantage of.
It's having online. Tell me if you agree with this, because I've run an open, like a spoken word night myself, or co-run one, and we were very established with it for pre-lockdown in England. We've just started coming out of it now, we have, but there's still lots of opportunity to do like Zoom readings now, and it's been quite an interesting experience, really. And how have you found it?
I also found it interesting, and I'll tell you, I feel so comfortable on Zoom now. I'm a little worried about myself, like reluctant to go out into the real world after being able to do so much on Zoom.
I think it does, doesn't it? Because it was we've all been locked up for 18 months, and yes. I was at home for a good half of it. I've just started going back to the day job now in the office past couple of weeks, and it's been a major shock to your system, major shock to my system, really. And it's like it's facing people again now. It's just plain bizarre, isn't it, really, Phil?
Yes.
Well, you think to yourself, how did you manage it before? So
yeah, exactly. Yes, and here we're having a surge with Delta, and even in vaccinated people, breakthrough cases and stuff. And my book club was planning on meeting in person in September, but now I think, because when we planned it in June, we thought, September, everything will be pretty well taken care of. But of course it's not now. So I think we're going to go back to Zoom.
Yeah. You might be on Zoom a little bit longer, as I would say, definitely. So I know what you mean with that one. So, but anyway, Rebecca, great to chat today. Good luck with the book. And
thank you.
Good luck, book number 2. Let's hope for 2023 for you, definitely. So now,
thanks so much.
If people want to find out more about you, where are the best going?
RebeccaDeHarling.com is my website, and my link to Facebook is there. And they can find out all about the books. They can look at other, things I've written, blog posts, guest blog posts, or articles and things like that. So that's RebeccaDeHarlingue.com.
Sounds good to me, right? So I'll make sure it gets put up in the right hook for you, definitely. So been brilliant today. I've really enjoyed today chatting, Rebecca.
Thank you so much, Andy.
Hang around, so I do need to chat to you off microphone anyway. So
okay,
that's it for today, guys and girls. As always, as Don Callis says in Impact Wrestling, stay safe and stay over. And we'll see you all next time. Take care.
Spoken Label. Spoken Label.
Hi, it's Andy N. Spoken Label. Bonus feature with this podcast is a short extract from Rebecca's book, which she kindly sent over to me after the podcast was recorded. The Lines Between Us. Stay safe and stay over, as Don Callis at Impact Wrestling says, and most importantly, enjoy.
Spoken Label.
We're in 1661 Madrid, at the home of Ana. Her servant, Clara, has just come to tell her that Fernando from her brother's household, from Ana's brother, Sebastian, has come to say that Sebastian, as well as Juliana, his daughter, and Juliana's dueña, or governess, Silvia, have disappeared. We begin with Clara speaking. Doña Ana, come quickly. It is old Fernando. He is very upset, but none of us can make sense of what he's saying. Ana put a robe over her nightclothes, quickly followed Clara, and found Fernando, Sebastian's manservant, seated on a stool. He was quiet now, having exhausted what air was left to him after his walk from Sebastian's home. When he saw Ana, he began again. How to explain? Gone. No one saw, and then I looked for... Calm yourself, Fernando. Ana took his hand. Look at me and take slow, deep breaths. Compose yourself and begin again, please. Very slowly. What has you so agitated, my friend? Who was gone, Fernando? Both. All. Don Sebastian, the señorita, and even my Silvia. At this last he could contain himself no longer, and tears welled up in his eyes. Silvia and Fernando had served in the same house for over 40 years, he manifestly loving her for all of them. Though Ana believed that he had once hoped for more, it seemed that he had long since learned to live on the sisterly regard that was all that Silvia was willing to offer him. Ana had often thought this hard of Silvia, but Silvia kept her own counsel in these things, and Sebastian's house ever esteemed a circumspect woman. Clara shook her head. Gone? Surely the ladies just went to Mass, and surely the master has no need to make an accounting to you of his whereabouts. Ana looked reprovingly at Clara for her lack of sympathy at Fernando's distress, and even in his present state, Fernando's face made it clear that he did not have to accept condescension from another servant. Please explain yourself once more, Fernando. Ana tried again. What do you mean? They are not just gone for the day, Senora. There was chaos in the señorita's room, as Silvia never would allowed, and clothes were clearly missing. And my brother's room? And Silvia's? Don Sebastian's room is orderly as always, and I could not see that any clothes had been taken, but he also left before the household was up and about. Silvia's room... But here the old man could not continue, but simply wept, as though recalling what he had seen but could not describe. Well, I'm sure that there is some explanation, and that my brother will inform us of it when he returns, which will surely be today, since he at least has taken no change of attire, and we all know how fastidious he is about his appearance. Ana was certain of this aspect of her response, but it was difficult to imagine why her niece and Silvia might have left so unexpectedly. Fernando clearly needed more reassurance than this, and Ana suggested. Perhaps Juliana and Silvia decided to gather some old, needed clothing, and wished to distribute it to the poor. But why so early, Senora? And why so secretly?
Spoken Label.